if I get up and push on these boulders, eventually one of them is going to move. Or in your case, Darren, start a studio and get them all moving.
This is Truly Independent, a show that demystifies the indie film journey by documenting the process of releasing independent films in theaters. Each week, Garrett Batty and I, Darren Smith, will update you on our journey, bringing guests to share their insights into the process and answer your questions.
Oh, Garrett. Hello, my friend.
Hey, was that intro music? Do we play intro music? Sounds great.
You know, I always play intro music in my head whenever I get on a show. It just
Right.
feels like it puts me in the right mood. A lot of times it's just like a little bit of John Mayer, you know, just some like guitar
Yeah.
stuff.
Obviously, obviously our audience understands editing, and they probably know the intro music isn't even close to. We don't hear that while we're recording. So that's funny that you played in your head. I do the same thing.
Yes. Well, you were referencing something that I should have picked up on and I didn't until you said it. And so there we go.
I always think of like, okay, push play on YouTube, and now what do they hear? Anyway, hello. Thanks for being here. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Oh, so good. I decided to go back to the gym. I've been working out at home since the pandemic. So 5 years that I've been working out at home. And, you know, I feel like I'm in decent shape, but I go back to the gym yesterday and then I wake up this morning to go back again and I can't move my arms.
Oh,
And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do if I can't bend my elbows? It hurts so bad. So there's some life updates from my
that's like our morning talk show that the chipper hosts talking kind of about like things that don't really matter. Yeah. But that's good. Good workout. Glad you're here, and hope you feel better.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, good. Well, I've had a good week. It's been a busy week. Again, we talked a little bit offline about, hey, what do we want to talk about, or what are the updates? And you just said same thing, which is so true, right? I mean, for me, it's the same thing, kind of pitching. And I had this kind of metaphor popped into my head the other day of we're just surrounded by these giant boulders, right? And we're just pushing on a boulder, and then when that gets tiring, you turn around and there's another one, and you're pushing on it. And these are all different film projects, obviously in various stages, but they're all in the very, very early stages. And it's sometimes frustrating because I never know, just like I never have complete faith in which boulder to push on, like which one is going to give or to move or to break or to really gain momentum. And then so you kind of push on them all, push a little bit and take a little bit, and you're developing 3 or 4 big things. And the challenge is, once one does take off, the other boulders just sit there. They just sit there and almost become abandoned. And so I've had to kind of warn people that I'm working with on different projects, like, okay, yes, we're meeting and we're writing the pilot script, or we're meeting and we're developing a pitch deck or whatever with different groups. I have to say, I don't know if this is going to go or not. And if it does, or if another one goes, sorry, like this has to get put on hold for a while. How do you deal with that? Is that relatable at all to you or anybody out there?
You build a studio and you hire people, and you have a development department, and you have a distribution department and a production department and post-production. Like that's why companies exist, to be able to expand the capacity of a single person. So, that's whether or not that's something that you desire as a business owner, the owner and executive producer of 3 Coin Productions, like that's the answer though. Like it's a simple answer. Oh, you just hire people so they can keep those things moving. Because there's lots of, like you said, there's all these little boulders everywhere. And if no one's pushing on them, then they stay stagnant. And so,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's a good point and a good answer. And once again, you solved it. That doesn't mean I have the resources to be able to do that, but
No.
but
It doesn't make it easy. It's simple, but it doesn't make it easy. I mean, everything that we do, I think, is fairly simple. How do you raise money? You talk to a lot of investors, and over time you hone your pitch and you get better at talking to people and reaching out to people, and you put a system together that makes it easier and repeatable. And at some point, the first investor comes in, and then the next one's easier, and the next one's easier, and the next one's easier. If you're using that sort of a flywheel system, that it doesn't make it easy. You still have to wrestle with every day getting up and going, why does anyone want to talk to me about this thing that I'm doing? Am I crazy? Is this stupid? What am I doing? That person on LinkedIn said they hate me. Like, it's all a mental game. The mental stuff is hard. I heard a great quote this morning that I'm so glad that I have an opportunity to share it. This was my friend Carl Richards quoting someone named Sydney Banks, and I'm not familiar with Sydney, but they say, we live in the feeling of our thinking. Ooh, that's really good. And it basically is saying that like perception is reality. Like whatever we think is what we feel. And the only way that I've been able to overcome those sometimes daily little obstacles of you're not good enough to be doing this is to realize that I'm doing it to myself. That is just a thought. It's not reality. And I want to be in a better mindset in order to be able to talk to people. And so it takes the practice of like getting out of your thoughts and moving your body around and getting like feeling better about yourself and going, okay, I'm enough. I'm good. I can do this. And then you do it. And you just repeat ad nauseum until you're until you have what you want. So that's all I've learned over the years of doing this stuff is like, you just keep doing it.
Yeah. Just keep doing it. That's a good thought, a good motivational thought. Just the realization to me is that every morning, like a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker, has to have a ridiculous amount of hope, right? You wake up every morning hopeful, and you have to. And there's no room for cynicism or negativity or anything but, I hope today is going to warrant and be worth my effort. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so sometimes it feels, yeah. Anyway, just stay hopeful. Okay. Okay.
That's actually a good transition into one of our topics today, I think.
Yes. Okay. Go lead us into that. I'm excited. I'm very excited to talk about this with you.
Yeah, me too. We were talking beforehand and realized that, we know somebody that had a massive success over the weekend. We're talking about Jared Hess and the movie Minecraft, which side note, this is not the main topic, but like the pundits got it way wrong. They were thinking it was going to do half the numbers that it did. It did massive numbers over the weekend, over 300 million worldwide in 3 days, which is bonkers. And Jared Hess, as you may or may not know, is the guy behind Napoleon Dynamite, right? Tiny little movie out of Idaho and Utah that that was, believe it or not, was the first movie that I watched after coming home from a 2-year service mission for my church. And I did not get it. Everybody was like, we've watched it a dozen times. It's the funniest movie ever. And I'm like, I don't get the comedy. I do now. I didn't then. But my goodness, Jared Hess, who's, contemporary of yours, I'll put it that way, went from indie filmmaker to now having the biggest movie of the year so far, the biggest release of the year so far. And it's like now this saving the box office from its
Box office,
potential
5%,
doom.
so 5%
I
jump at box office. Yeah, bigger opening than Barbie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
So we want to talk about that idea of, is it a good or bad thing to go from an indie filmmaker to a studio filmmaker? Are there upsides and downsides? Are there trade-offs? What are those trade-offs? Because a lot of people are talking about this right now. And I see kind of the majority are leaning on the side of like really disliking that the studio system or Hollywood is taking all of our indie auteur filmmakers and putting them into the studio system. And that's bad. And I don't know if I agree with that. So I'm curious your thoughts, and then I'll kind of go with whatever I come up with after that.
Well, yeah.
People know how this podcast works, right?
Yeah, this is a very casual conversation. And we'd love to get you guys' comments and takes on it. So those that are listening and commenting, talk to us about what are some of your favorite indie directors that have crossed over to the mainstream, and what are the risks of that. And you acknowledge that Jared Hess is one of my contemporaries, and I'm going to sit here and name drop. But yes, Jared and I were in school together, and enjoyed working on similar projects and some of the same projects. And in fact, the two credited writers on Minecraft were some of my writing. I had the opportunity to sit with them and learn from them and work on projects with them in the same film school film program. And so congratulations! I could not be more happy for their success over the weekend. Um, you asked about what's my take on that. I love that. I think that ultimately it's storytelling, right? It is the studios want to find creative voices that can tell creative stories, and I think in the right collaboration, in the right alignment of that experiment, where a studio comes in and invites an indie film or an expert storyteller to give a pitch or proposal on some recognized IP. And I think as long as they allow that creative voice to kind of ring through from beginning to end, I think you're going to see some great results. And that's been proven before with certainly with Minecraft. You could see the DNA, the Jared Hess DNA, in the movie, and it's rung through. Christopher Nolan doing Dark Knight, and Greta Gerwig doing Barbie, and Ryan Coogler doing the
Black
Black
Panther.
Panther. So these are excellent experiments and successful experiments of independent filmmakers getting a big budget from a big studio and just doing what they do.
Yeah. I would add like Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings and
Yeah,
Taika
right.
Waititi with the Thor movies and the other movies he's been involved in. Like I went years ago, I think it was 2016 or somewhere around there, where I went to Sundance when he had Hunt for the Wilder People there. I was just
Yeah,
like, this is amazing. This is such a good movie. It was like a $5 million budget movie made in New Zealand. And then he's off making the next Thor movie. I was like, that's quite a jump. That's amazing. And then you watch Thor and you're like, man, that really was served well by that decision. And so I think it's too, we talked about maybe being lazy a little bit last week. I think it's too lazy to say that studio is bad and cold and lacks depth and lacks
yeah,
artistry, and the people that are running studios are not artistic, they're only money driven, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's just lazy. And you look at things like the decision to hire Greta Gerwig to do Barbie, which was, in my mind, a perfect person for co-writing and directing that movie. I give that to Margot Robbie less than I give it to, or more than I give it to Warner Brothers or whoever. I think they distribute it, right? But the idea that it's black and white, as soon as you cross a line, you no longer have the ability or the autonomy to be creative or to have a voice. No, I think a lot of times history has proven that studios can make really good decisions by bringing people up, so to speak, from the indie world into the studio system and can have great success there. There's probably plenty of counter arguments as well, but I'm not interested in those. I just want to celebrate the fact that like this team made an awesome movie. I took my boys to see it. They loved it. It was a
yeah,
full theater, cheering and people hooting and hollering and quoting stuff. And my son, who really is into Minecraft, is every 5 minutes going, "This is a thing. Blah, blah, blah. That's not really in the movie, but blah, blah, blah." I
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
loved it. I
yeah.
loved it. And so they nailed it in my mind, and the box office supports that statement. So
And
yeah,
I think that on the flip side of that, congratulations to the studio, like yeah, for I guess giving this indie filmmaker the resources needed, and the studio has access to the market. I don't want to say, boy, if the studios would only just do everything that the indie filmmakers want us to do, that or want them to do, boy, we'd all succeed. That's not the case at all. I mean, I think that there's a great balance of collaboration between the studios saying, look, we have this IP, we have access to an audience that is hungry for stories. Um, and you're a storyteller. Let us support you in this story, but it's got to align with our audience and these access points. And I think you got to kind of thread the needle there. There are examples of it working very successfully, and then there are examples of perhaps when that balance is off, and you can tell. And you read about those. It's no secret that Colin Trevorrow and his Jurassic World project was not a balanced collaboration. Or you talk about the like Phil Lord and who's Phil and Chris getting
Chris
pulled
Miller.
from the Han Solo project, because it's just not being a balance, whether it's them or the studio. That's, each side is going to say whatever it is, but
Yeah.
and maybe we don't need to get into that, but the benefit of that balanced collaboration is the result of something like a Minecraft or Barbie or something like that.
Yeah, I'm still sad that I never got to watch Edgar Wright's Ant-Man movie, because apparently it was the best script that many people in Hollywood had ever read, and we don't get it. Like, we will never see it. It's sad, because Edgar Wright's one of my favorites. But yeah, I like it a lot, and we have to be a little bit more judicious with the way that we talk about this stuff online. I think I'm getting prescriptive, and I know you don't like when I get prescriptive. So let me change the way that I do that. But to say, like, it really saddens me when there's this black and white absolutist opinions that are thrown about online, because we should be celebrating when it works, and also realize when it doesn't work. We had movies recently that lost hundreds of millions of dollars from the studios. Well,
Sure.
guess what? On the other side of that, they still made $100 million, which indie filmmakers don't know how to do. Like, that's not something that we can do consistently. So there is something to be said for, even though it lost money, that's more of there's more that goes into that than just who wrote or who directed it. And the fact that a filmmaker who came from the indie side was able to have exposure to millions and millions of people to go see a movie, that's not something that's available to them outside of the studio system. So I still think there's things to be celebrated, even when the pundits in the Hollywood ecosystem is, just lamenting how bad a movie did. I don't know. I think we should stop that. I think we should stop talking about, oh man, that movie lost so much money, it's a bad movie. Those two things are not necessarily correlated.
Yeah, I agree. That equation shouldn't have an equal sign on it. This lost money, therefore it's a bad movie, and I don't know if that's the point you're making.
It is. Yeah, it's part of it
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah. Plenty of great movies don't do well at the box office. Uh, yeah, I think that there's always. I have a lot of empathy for that. Darren, during COVID, I was hired to buy a. I was hired by a, for independent terms, a studio, to to direct a film, and we went over. This is the biggest movie that I've ever done. It's a multi-million-dollar budget movie. It was a story that I pitched to them years ago, and I want to be careful because certainly the movie might still come out, and hope, I certainly hope it does. Uh, but it was a taste of what I thought was an imbalance between the studio and the director, and to say, you've hired me to make this movie. We went over and we shot this movie, spent millions of dollars to make the movie, and the studio then, uh, there were differences, certainly differences. And now, whenever I read, so and so left a project because of creative differences, I have so much empathy, and I think, oh, uh, I get that. I understand that. And boy, I would love for that to always work out, and for the studio to understand what their role is, and it's to take the product to their audience, but not necessarily to speak for the creative process.
Yeah.
And for me to understand the role of saying, hey, this is the studio. I've never had access to this amount of money or resources, and I know how to, and now let me use those to tell the story that you hired me to do. When it doesn't work out, it can be heartbreaking for both sides.
Yeah. I had this thought of, what if we treated it more like sports do, right? I was up late last night catching up on all the Premier League soccer games that I missed over spring break, and
Yeah.
was just thinking of that as a corollary. We would celebrate if a team or if an individual moved up a league, right? If a baseball player you loved went from the minors to the majors, that's not a bad thing. You wouldn't be worried that their style of play is going to be hampered by the system that they are now in. You'd celebrate it going, wow, they finally get recognized for all the hard work and effort that they've put in. And I kind of wish we would do that, right? We could celebrate the fact that so-and-so got a movie at a studio, and now we get to have a movie with their voice. And yes, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And maybe that's something for the studios to look at this same analogy and go, oh, if we bring up someone from the minors, so to speak, to use that language, from the minor league to the majors, well, the worst thing you can do is to make them, like, force them into a system that isn't, adjusted for their style of play, to say, oh, now that you're here, you're going to play like this when we brought you up because you're so good because you do this.
Yes.
Don't do that. Right. So that's maybe a lesson that the studios could take away from this analogy. But I do think it's apt. I think it works in the sense of, we like movies, so let's celebrate movies, and let's celebrate when people. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't see it as a bad thing. I think when they have an opportunity, when indie filmmakers get an opportunity to go tell a story with a bigger budget, bigger resources, and reach a bigger audience, I think all around that's a pretty awesome thing.
I always liken it to this. You've got an independent filmmaker or an independent film. Like, that is one of the most competitive, like one of the most difficult places to succeed, both business and creative, and unfortunately, maybe this is a tangent within this tangent. The best filmmakers are the best independent filmmakers are not always the people that get to make independent films, which is unfortunate. Just because even on an outside of the studios, on a very independent level, the filmmaker has to have the skills of raising money, putting together the project, bringing the right cast, and all of this stuff that's maybe unrelated to directing. And so those that are just excellent and these auteur directors may not ever get the opportunity to really showcase that because of the lack of resources there. That's a little bit of a tangent. But the original point that I was trying to make before my attention veered was that independent filmmakers, when we do get that opportunity, we ought to recognize that it is this opportunity to really do what we've done that has gotten us noticed on an independent film, and to duplicate that now on a scale level, to not be at that point fearful or hesitant or dependent on other people's creative visions. Like, we're hired as a director because of our unique ability to put a creative fingerprint on this particular script or product or IP or whatever it is. And so we need to do that confidently, knowing that we're the best. If the studio would allow us to do that, and if the independent filmmakers step up and say, that's what you hired me to do, I'm going to do that, I think that's when we get a winning combination.
Yeah, I like that confidence going into that, and with that relationship and understanding the thing that they hired you for is the thing that they hired you for. So,
right.
yeah,
It's like, you make you know how to cook this incredible meal. Come on and do it for us, and we're going to tell you how to do it. That's not a good situation.
No, there's definitely a two sides situation here. This is awesome, and I want to make sure that we touch on another topic that's also very timely, and because I think it relates. And so, recently, just in the last week, as we're recording this, there's a lot of buzz around a comment or an interview that Ted Sarandos, one of the co-CEOs of Netflix, gave, where he really was comparing YouTube and Netflix. And he has had this kind of real zero sum, either or, with us or against us subtext to all of his comments. He said that Netflix is in the spending time business while YouTube is in the killing time business, and that Netflix is better for creators than YouTube. And so I think it's worth some commentary from us as indie filmmakers who are sitting here going, well, in one way, it'd be great to work with Netflix, but it's a closed ecosystem. That you can't just, like, show up and be like, here's my movie, put it on Netflix. It doesn't work that way. And so YouTube is way more open and accessible to any filmmaker anywhere in the world. They can upload a video today and start monetizing it or charging for it. But the idea that I'm interested in kind of getting your thoughts on is this idea of, why is it so important for these CEOs to treat the industry like it's a zero sum game? Like, there's a fixed size pie, and if YouTube takes more of it, that means there's less for Netflix and vice versa. Do you agree with how he's approaching this and how he's looking at the industry, or do you see it differently?
That's a good question, and probably one I would need to process for a little bit to kind of understand. Sounds like you were made aware of these comments earlier in the week.
Before today, you mean?
And I'm just hearing them. I gotta step out of Minecraft a little bit and pay attention to this. No, no. I think based on what you've just said and kind of what that comment is, um, I started to kind of think and question that. Okay, do I make an emotional connection to YouTube Shorts? And aside from a laugh, I might share it with my son or something. There's not a necessarily an emotional, like a moving, uh, behavior changing type connection. So I could see where that comment is coming. Whereas a Netflix series might actually inspire or initiate some sort of change. So that being said, I mean, I've watched plenty of movies on YouTube. So as a delivery mechanism, it's A or B. It doesn't matter. But maybe as a platform for developing stories, it seems like they've got different goals. I mean, to what I understand, YouTube doesn't have a development department that they're purchasing, hiring creators to create content. So it seems like a different.
Yeah,
It seems like a weird comparison.
I agree. There's two different things. YouTube did have a program for a few years where they were investing in projects into,
That's right. That's right. The YouTube Red. I guess they came up with
but
what was the
that's
Karate
been,
Kid.
yeah, it's been discontinued for some reason. I'm not sure why. But yeah, my thoughts on this is it's hurtful to the business. Like, why can't, again, it goes back to what we were talking about. Why can't we just celebrate all forms of storytelling? Why does it have to be that Netflix style is good and YouTube style is bad? Um, I think that the fact that YouTube has democratized distribution for people is a good thing. It means we get more stories from more creators. And I can think of plenty, I mean, half a dozen come to mind right now of long form YouTube interviews or videos that I've watched this year that have dramatically impacted the way I think or the way I operate or the way I'm approaching my business because I get access to people on, in different parts of the world that I wouldn't have access to otherwise. And that content would never be on Netflix, at least in their current model and the way that they're doing the programming.
Right. Yes.
So I can also look at Netflix and go, man, there's half a dozen movies that I've watched on Netflix that wish I could have those 2 hours back, because they just didn't deliver. So I just don't think, again, it's this absolutist thinking of this is good and this is bad, hard line, no questions asked. And then this idea of there's a fixed pie. I think it's important for filmmakers to kind of wrap their head around this idea, which is when you go out and create something, you're expanding the pie. That's something that did not exist by definition, right? You come up with an idea for a movie, you film it, you distribute it, you put it out in the world. That is monetary value that didn't exist. Like before that movie existed, nobody could give you $20 to rent it or $10 to go see it in theaters. So you're
Yeah.
creating new monetary value, but you're also creating new story value, new entertainment value, whatever you want to call it, where if you didn't do it, it wouldn't exist. And so there is no fixed pie. There's no limit to how many stories can be told. And if you go tell that story, that means I don't get to tell mine. That's not real. But that's kind of how he's framing the conversation, that like, if you choose YouTube, you're bad. And if you choose Netflix, good. It's just so lazy. And it's so, I think, wrong again. And so I want filmmakers to understand that we're not competing with each other. Like we should be, in my mind, supporting each other. And in my experience, it's way more fun to support each other and to help each other and to collaborate and to help and do whatever we can to support each other than to be upset that, oh, so-and-so got their movie made and funded and distributed. And so that makes me mad. It's unfortunate. And so I think these two topics that we're talking about are related for that reason alone, if not
Yeah.
other reasons.
Yeah, maybe this metaphor applies or it doesn't, but one of this kind of the vision that I often go back to when I'm getting ready to distribute a movie, distribute an independent film, is like this realization, a very very humbling realization that first of all, film, by its just nature is more like dessert than meat, right? It's not a necessity, and don't don't cancel me right now, but it's certainly a luxury. We're very, very grateful for it, especially in times of, I'm reminded of like times of COVID where we're all kind of trapped inside. And guess what? Netflix and cable and everything, subscriptions shot through the roof because everyone was like, "Hey, take our minds off of life for a second." But really, we are creating dessert. We're creating just dessert that some people want, and there should be a whole variety of that. So if I go into the donut aisle and there's a variety of different donuts, I shouldn't care if donuts exist down there that I don't like a particular kind. Great, good for them that they're on the shelf, and great. You know what? When I turn around, there's all the vegetables, and I don't see any donuts. That's really what some people want. So it's like already, I'm kind of losing the metaphor, but the point is, what we're creating as storytellers and filmmakers, whether it's independent films or giant, huge blockbusters, are just different varieties of dessert. And some are going to have certain tastes, and they'll attract a certain audience, and others won't, and that's okay. There's no just because one exists doesn't mean that mine can't.
Yeah, and life is so much better because donuts exist.
Because that's what I was going for, Darren. Thank you. You summed it up perfectly.
Wouldn't life be boring if it weren't for donuts? But yeah, well said. I think it actually is a really good analogy of what we're trying to talk about here, because we sometimes get really important. we start feeling like it's really, really important and essential, and we can take it really seriously when it doesn't work out the way we want to. And I think that's a good perspective to put on top of all this stuff of like, okay, well, does it matter what Ted Sarandos said last week? No. It won't matter tomorrow. It won't matter a year from now.
Sell more Twinkies. He's just trying to sell Twinkies.
Yeah, I think that's if we keep going on this topic, it's like, we got to look at the incentives of the guy that's saying the things he's saying. Like, of course, the guy who runs Netflix is going to poo-poo on YouTube, which is stealing attention from Netflix and streaming, and he's going to poo-poo on the movie theaters because that's a competitor to his business. So I get it. I think we all get it, but I think it's fun. Not that we do, news stories each week. We rarely do this kind of thing, but I think it just highlighted two perspectives on life in the industry that were important to kind of talk about and work through. So that was fun. Thanks for letting me do that.
That was fun. I'm going to throw one curveball to you. One additional topic. Again, it's not news. This is not a news show because we'll be posting this 3 weeks after. But this week was CinemaCon. And, going back to the whole big blockbuster experience, I want to read a post from one of our good friends, Brandon Purdy, who he's the head of theatrical distribution for Angel Studios. He's down at CinemaCon. And if you'll indulge me for a second, Brandon's a dear friend. He distributed my first movie, and it was his first movie that Purdy Distribution distributed. The Brandon said, yes, we want to do this. Let's figure out how to crack the theatrical, code and get in there. Yeah. So he says, over 20 years ago, this is Brandon Purdy, when I first started attending CinemaCon, then called Show West, I made myself a promise. I wrote down a goal that one day I would be distributing films wide enough, significant enough, and often enough to stand on those stages. He goes and he lists different people that he admired there. And he says, for the next 2 decades, I returned to CinemaCon every year with that same fire. The determination only grew stronger. And then, through preparation, experience, and a little divine timing, which is kind of the perfect description of how any movie gets made, in my opinion, my path aligned with Angel Studios in Symphony. The opportunity appeared, and the dream became real. His post is lengthy. His final paragraph says, this past week at CinemaCon, at 45 years old, I felt that same magic, that same hope, that same beauty of being transported just for a moment away from the complexity and noise of the world. I'll fight for the big screen and the shared movie-going experience until the day I die. I skipped over the part where Brandon talks about he presented on stage. I mean, he's announcing Angel's slate on stage. And I just love that. I mean, I commented to him, I said, this is the definition of making your dreams come true, right? It's that determination, whether you're an independent filmmaker or somebody who's passionate about distribution or whatever it is, like it's doable. It's doable. It's that naive hope that you have to wake up with. And I got to find a better term because it's not naive. It's
faith.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good term. It is. It's that faith that if I get up and push on these boulders, eventually one of them is going to move. Or in your case, Darren, start a studio and get them all moving. Push on these boulders, eventually one of them is going to move. Or in your case, Darren, start a studio and get them all moving. But through that, we can make the movies we've been wanting to make.
Yeah. I saw him post that on LinkedIn as well. And I was just like, man, I can't celebrate this enough. It's exactly the same experience, just from a distributor rather than a filmmaker. I mean, we're all filmmakers, right? But he's coming at it from a different part of the industry and has the same experience that we've been through, the struggle of the early years and having this big dream that we're pursuing for so long and not knowing how it's going to work out, but having that faith that if we just keep going, it will. I mean, I've said this multiple times on multiple podcasts. Like, it took me 12 years to produce my first movie. That's a long time, but I attribute 80% of my success to the fact that I just stuck it out and kept going rather than giving up. It's not that I'm special or extra good. It's just I didn't go away.
Yeah. Well, it turns into a starvation game, right? Who can starve for the longest?
That's really cool that you shared that. And it's congrats to Brandon. He's a friend, and I need to go to lunch. We need to go to lunch with him. I love that dude. Congrats to them and Angel Slate. They had a big week at CinemaCon, so very cool to see.
Yeah, CinemaCon was great, and it sounds like it turned out, and there was just this energy for all studios who were really committed to the theatrical experience, which is great for independent filmmakers.
Yeah. So cool. I'm glad you threw that curveball. I don't have much more to say than like, yay, go Brandon.
Yeah. I mean, it just comes full circle on like, hey, from independent to big screen, whether you're on the filmmaking side of it or the distribution side of it, whatever it is, good. Celebrate. Let's celebrate any successes. One little celebration, a little shout out. I didn't realize this, but The Carpenter, Darren, a movie you and I produced and I wrote and directed, was released last weekend on a streaming platform, which is great. So congratulations on that.
This is how I hear about it.
I was at where was I? I was at a meeting, kind of a meeting where I was pitching an idea, pitching a story to a group of people from that area. It was a story set in Germany, and there were a group of people that served missions in Germany. At any rate, and somebody said, "Hey, did you know that the Carpenter is on this streaming platform? It opens tonight." And I didn't deny it because they seemed like they had conviction in it, but I hadn't heard one thing about it. And so I said, "Oh, that's great." And I thought maybe they were totally mistaken. I had no idea what they're talking about. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's nice." But sure enough, then I come home that night and look it up, and there it is.
Well, what's the platform? We got to tell everybody where it's streaming.
It's called Living Scriptures.
Oh, nice! They made a deal with Living Scriptures. Awesome.
You can subscribe to Living Scriptures, I think, for $9 a month or something like that, and watch The Carpenter and Faith of Angels and some of my other movies.
There you go. I just loaded it, and Faith of Angels is right there in the home page banner, which is fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
You see Carpenter on there?
I'm looking. Not yet. Maybe they haven't updated it yet. When was this that you heard?
Oh, it's on there. But at any rate, and they are distributing the not the director's cut, so it's the more of the studio cut, I guess we'd say.
Theatrical cut, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. That makes me happy that people can watch it, because I get asked every week, where can I watch Carpenter? I'm like, I could send you a screener. I don't know. Other than that, like, you could call the guys that own it. and ask
Yeah.
for a copy. But that's really exciting. That makes me happy that they did a deal there.
Okay, other things that are progressing. We're making good progress with Faith of Angels on Bitmax. I had a great conversation with them. In fact, we probably need to have a representative of Bitmax on the show because their model is pretty slick, and it seemed like a great solution for indie filmmakers that want to do indie distribution on their own. So that's moving along. We're looking at a release date on May 6th. The DVD and the Blu-ray are being authored and getting ready for replication, which is great because we've already got some orders. This is something that, again, we posted on our website and on Amazon. I had to take it down on Amazon because people were ordering it, and I was worried that it would get like negative reviews because I need to ship them. But on our website, when people order it, I know that that's a destination site that they've come looking for it. So I just shoot them a quick email saying, "Hey, you've found out our secret. This release is May 6th. We're hoping to get early copies out. Thank you for your order." And so far, people have been very positive and very responsive to that.
That's awesome. There was an update that I wanted to share as well because you and I both have like products that we're putting into the world. You have the
Yeah, we
DVD,
do.
and people are just buying them, and you haven't told anybody except on this podcast that it exists yet. And I released a book last month, and people are going to hear that and go, "Wait, what? He wrote a book?" Well, yeah, because I did not launch it. I didn't do like a big month-long promotion marketing thing. I was just like, what if I just had it out and it existed? And if people were in the course of navigating my website, saw that it's available, liked it enough to want to buy it, that's great. Well, I sell 1 or 2 copies a week. Like, well, more
Yeah,
than that. It's probably 4 or 5 copies a week. I was going to say a day,
yeah,
but that
right.
wasn't accurate. But a couple, let's call it 3 or 4 a week. Let's say that. That's the
Well,
number.
I've seen people plugging it. I've seen people on
Yeah,
LinkedIn that are plugging it, that have purchased it and
it's
find
crazy.
the content very, very
People
helpful.
are they're not necessarily searching it out, but the people that are, following along and are just getting in the stream of what I'm putting out there, it naturally guides them over to, hey, there's a book that if you're into this kind of thing, it'll help you get those outcomes.
Where
And
are
I
they
sell
purchasing it?
I'm self-distributing. So the same
On
thing
So they go to your
um,
website
on
or
my own site. Yeah. So if you go to Craftsman Films, there's a link there. If you go to craftsmancreative.co, there's a link there. I sell it through Shopify, and then the books are printed on demand by the company Lulu. They're a print on demand company that I met and actually sponsored the writing of the book. So I actually got paid a 5-figure sum to write and talk about the book as I was writing it. And so it's kind of contractually obligated, but I'm happy to do it also, that I mention Lulu every time I talk about the book. But I mean, as someone who is really trying to crack independent self-distribution for movies, it really helps that I'm also trying to crack it with the books,
yeah,
and it's working. It's a really small scale. I haven't sold 1 million copies, but I don't need to, right? And the reason that I think it's so smart that you're selling it through your website is that you get the email address of all the buyers. If you sell it on Amazon, you get the email address of all the buyers. If I sell a book, I get their email address. And that relationship is so important that I'm willing to trade some sort of publishing deal or some sort of distribution through bookstores or Amazon or whatever. You can't buy my new book on Amazon because I don't want random people who I don't know buying my book. I want
yeah,
to know them. I want to know who they are. So we're getting on another soapbox, which I'm happy to get on anytime. But just the idea of owning your distribution channels, you become a little mini studio, right? I'm a little mini publishing house. My book was published by DS Media, which is me, right?
that's great.
Your movie is now being distributed by 3 Coin Productions because you're distributing it. You're doing the work of distribution. I think
Yeah.
it's smart. It's awesome.
Well, it might be a way to keep going, keep making titles, right? Because
Yeah.
what do you say? Like something equals permission, profit
Profit
equals
equals
permission.
permission.
Right now, we're not at profits point because every dime that comes in goes back to the investors to pay off P&A and then negative cost. But if we build a list of 10,000 people that have purchased the DVD, what's the likelihood of them paying attention to our next one? Maybe
Yeah,
even pre-ordering it. So
exactly.
that's the
And
goal.
you don't need 250 million subscribers to be profitable as an independent
Right.
artist, filmmaker, studio, whatever you want it to be, author. you need a couple thousand, you know, like that's it. And so I think that's the mindset we got to take into the work we're going to go, you know, after this call and in the weeks ahead of like, that's the goal, is to get profitably independent and be able to greenlight our own stuff, because then you can do whatever you want. You don't need a studio to call you up in order to make the movie you want to make. How's that for wrapping it up with a bow?
Oh yeah, you came full circle. But if they do want to call, my number will be in the show notes.
There you go. I'm available.
Just kidding.
Awesome.
All right.
Nice.
Hey, great to see you. Great checking in. Good luck this week. Wake up hopeful.
I love it. Thanks, man. And thanks to the audience. We love hearing the messages that you guys are listening, that you're getting value from the podcast. You can do us a favor, go leave a review and tell one person about this show. Then if everybody did that, it would double the number of listeners we have, which would be very impactful. So go ahead and do that. Send us a message. Let us know you're listening. And thanks for being here. If you have questions, shoot them over. Go to 3coinpro.com/podcast. You can put questions there and they go directly to Garrett, and we can answer them on the show. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Truly Independent. To join us on the journey, be notified and ask us questions about today's episode, head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast and put in your name and an email address. If you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app and be sure to share this. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Our intro and outro music is Election Time by Kjartan Abel.